Hi, I'm Mark, and today I want to talk about the never-ending story of crises in the UK. In Great Britain, one crisis follows the other. The economy is sluggish, inflation is high, and politicians do not seem able to lead the country. The frustration grows and erupts in new and larger strikes. And Vice Prime Minister Dominic Raab had to resign on Friday because of allegations of bullying. Less than 2 weeks before local elections across much of England, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's deputy Dominic Raab has resigned over those allegations, and I mentioned them in other videos before. The Brexit hardliner Raab last held the position of Minister of Justice in addition to the role of Deputy Prime Minister. With his resignation on Friday, he reacted to the results of an investigation report into his behavior in various ministerial posts in recent years. Former Secretary of Defense Alex Chalk will now head the Justice Department. Deputy Prime Minister will be Minister of State Oliver Dowden. The report partially confirmed the allegations against Raab. Among other things, he is said to have reprimanded employees harshly or even announced consequences if he was not satisfied with their work or the answers to his questions. Overall, he is said to have great distrust of his employees, whom he is suspected of wanting to sabotage his reform plans. Also, paranoia, way. Raab did not appear insightful in his letter of resignation. Of several allegations, only 2 were recognized as justified. He defended himself. However, these are very low threshold and therefore represent a dangerous precedent, in his opinion. The reviewer found that once in 4.5 years have I insulted or yelled at anyone, thrown objects or otherwise physically intimidated or intentionally humiliated anyone, Raab wrote. In a guest article also published in the newspaper The Telegraph on Friday, he described the procedure in connection with the allegations of bullying as Kafkaesque. Raab is the 3rd senior Sunak government member to resign over personal conduct. Sunak has been in office since October. Raab asked for an investigation in November after complaints against him became known. You might have seen my video that time. Sunak then hired a lawyer to independently review the allegations. In his letter of resignation, Raab described the investigation report because of the allegations of bullying, as I said, as a dangerous precedent. Well, not dangerous for him. Bullying is defined far too easily in the report, or far too low. He went on to say that he did not intentionally disparage anyone. He said he was sincerely sorry if anyone felt offended. However, Raab pointed out that the report did not accuse him of using swear words against people or yelling at them. According to the investigation, he also did not throw any objects, as I said. Ministers must be able to provide critical feedback to senior officials, Raab wrote. The assessor found that not once in 4.5 years he did yell or insult or throw objects, and he always goes to the point that he intentionally humiliated anyone. But he apologizes for an unintended stress or offense that he would have brought to the Department of Justice through pace, standards, or challenges. So he's still defending it after the report. Almost at the same time as his letter of resignation, the Telegraph, as I said, published an article written by Raab himself. And even there, he has no remorse here. Normal rules of fair evidence would be ignored. It was a concerted action against him. And his conclusion was the people will pay the price. Well, British politics is rarely short of drama here. In the early afternoon, Sunak appointed then, as I said, Alex Chalk, previously Secretary of Defense in the Ministry of Defense, as the new Minister of Justice. In his reply to Raab, Sunak wrote that he was sad that Raab was stepping down. At the same time, he recalled the promise he made when he took office in October to pursue integrity and accountability as the highest principle. However, despite repeated inquiries, Sunak's spokesman later refused to state whether Sunak now agreed with Tolley's report or with Raab's assessment. The Liberal Democrats also called for Raab's resignation as a member of the lower house. Raab has shown that he is not only unsuitable as a minister, but also completely unsuitable to represent his constituents in Parliament. That was said by Deputy Party Leader Daisy Cooper, according to The Guardian. Cooper demanded that his resignation should enable a by-election in his Esher and Walton constituency. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak ordered the investigation, as I said, after the allegations by former RAAB employees became known, and the head of government regretted the resignation in a reply, but described it as correct. RAAB was once considered a close ally of Sunak. However, the cool tone of his letter of resignation was interpreted as a sign of a break with the Prime Minister. The Tory party is still well behind the opposition Labour Party in nationwide polls for next year's general election. Should they do poorly in the forthcoming local elections across much of England on May 4th, that could put additional pressure on Sunak, and RAAB obviously didn't help there. Sunak himself faces an investigation into whether he violated the Code of Conduct for MPs. He is accused of not declaring a financial conflict of interest. It involves shares owned by his wife, Akshata Murthy, in a government-backed childcare company. Sunak wanted to calm things down after the chaos between his predecessors Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, but as I said, RAAB is now the third cabinet member since taking office to be forced to resign. Cabinet Office Minister Gavin Williamson was forced to resign in November last year after bluntly complaining that he had not been invited to the Queen's funeral. In turn, party leader Nadeem Zahawi, who is also a member of the cabinet at that time, was, like RAAB now, having an investigation into violations of the Code of Conduct, and his fate was about late payment of tax debts in the billions. No, millions, sorry. Billions is Sunak, millions is Zahawi. All three, Williamson, Zahawi and RAAB, have been appointed to their post by Sunak himself. The fact that one of his most loyal supporters has to go with RAAB does not make things easier for the Prime Minister. Sunak is said to have not urged RAAB to resign. That's what several British media reported on Friday, citing internal sources. It cannot be said that Rishi Sunak has been lucky in the few months he has been in office. The resignation of his deputy Dominic Raab on Friday is not simply an unfortunate event for the head of government. The Raab case in particular raises questions about the Prime Minister's ability to judge, and he also took in Suella Braverman. Allegations of bullying are given as the reason for the resignation. They didn't just fall out of the sky in the past few months. Rather, they have accompanied Raab for years in his numerous offices. Whatever the allegations, a smart politician needs to know who is safe to appoint to high office and who is not. But, and this does not give Rishi Sunak good marks either, in Raab's case, the Prime Minister was not in control of his decision. He had to give a prominent post to the exponent of the radical Brexit wing in the Conservative Party. Raab's appointment as Deputy Prime Minister and Justice Minister was also an expression of Sunak's weakness. The Prime Minister wants to push through pragmatic policies, as evidenced by the Northern Ireland deal with the EU now, the Windsor Framework, but he remains a prisoner of extremists in the party, and that smells very much like a loss of power after the next election. And so there is this combination of people there he was forced to take. Officially he's in charge, but how much is Rishi Sunak really in charge? Well, the vote on the Windsor Framework showed that the right-wingers in the party are losing ground as well, because it wasn't so many of the party that rebelled on that vote, but there wasn't a big chance for them to do anything with that either, with Labour voting with the government and so on. But the trouble within the Tory party is long from over, and that's why I personally think that the Tories need something other parties needed, like my own, by the way, to get out of power and restructure themselves and find a new way for themselves and clean out the house. Because if that continues as the way it does, it isn't doing any good for the Conservative Party, but even more, it's doing nothing good for the country, as we have seen it for quite a long time now. So even if I'm not a friend of the policies we will see when Labour takes over. The Tory party could do very well with being out of power for some years. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.